to keep the many men and machines in fighting shape during World War II's invasion of France, logistics technicians sure had their work cut out for them. Bombs, bullets, planes, and tanks were top priorities, so there's little room for luxury items like beer that would keep the troops in good spirits while fighting the Nazis. British breweries donated free beer to soldiers during World War II, but just after D-Day, there was no room made to ship it over the English Channel. Enter Britain's Royal Air Force. In the early days after the Normandy invasion of June 1944, British and American troops noticed an acute shortage of adult beverages, namely beer. Many British soldiers complained about watery cider being the only drink available in recently liberated French towns. Luckily for them, the Royal Air Force was on the tap to solve the problem. With no room for cargo on their small fighter planes, RAF pilots arrived at a novel solution, using drop tanks to transport beer instead of fuel. The drop tanks of a Spitfire each carried 45 gallons of gas, meaning a plane could transport 90 gallons of extra liquid. When carrying fuel, the tanks were used and then discarded. For the purposes of ferrying beer, the ground crew set about steam cleaning the tanks for their special deliveries. These flights became known as flying pubs by the troops they served. A few British breweries, such as Henniger and Constable, donated free beer for the RAF to take to the front. Other units had to pool their funds and buy the beer. As the desire for refreshment increased in Normandy, the RAF began employing the Hawker Typhoon, which could carry even more than the Spitfire. Unfortunately, the Typhoon is often mistaken by inexperienced American pilots as the German Focke-Wulf 190. According to one British captain, the beer deliveries were attacked twice in one day by US P-47 Thunderbolts. The Typhoon had to jettison its tanks into the English Channel to take evasive action, costing the troops on the ground dearly. The drop tanks also had a serious disadvantage. While they could carry large amounts of beer, the initial runs still tasted of fuel. Even after the tanks had been used several times and lost their fuel taste, they still imparted a metallic flavour to the beer. To counter this problem, Spitfire mechanics and pilots worked together to develop modification XXX, a change made to the wing pylons of Spitfire Mark 9s that allowed them to carry either specifically modified drop tanks or beer casks to deliver brews to the troops. The Spitfire Mark 9 was an evolved version of the Spitfire, with pylons under the wings for bombs or tanks. It was discovered that the bomb pylons could also be modified to carry beer kegs of various sizes. These kegs, often called beer bombs, were standard wooden kegs with a specially designed nose cone and attachments for transport under the wing of the Spitfire. Though they carried less beer, it arrived tasting like it just came out of the tap at the pub, chilled by the altitude of the flight over the channel. While flying up at altitudes, the below zero temperatures would freeze the barrels. By the time it got to the troops at the front, they'd be cold, but not frozen. To ensure their compatriots remained satisfied, pilots would often return to England for rudimentary maintenance issues or other administrative needs in order to grab another round. As the need for beer increased, all replacement Spitfires and Typhoons being shipped to airfields in France carried beer bombs in their bomb racks to the joy of the thirsty crews manning the airfields. Anyone who made a rough landing and dropped the tanks would be the most hated man on the squadron for an entire week. When the Americans learned of what the British were doing, they joined in, even bringing over ice cream for the GIs as well. As the practice gained popularity, Britain's Custom and Excess Ministry caught wind and tried to shut it down. Official modification XXX missions were stopped when the UK tax office warned brewers they would get in trouble for exporting beer abroad without paying taxes. But pilots still found ways to get beer where it was needed with the unofficial approval of the higher echelons. Less imaginative techniques involved stashing bottles wherever space could be found in the aircraft, which included the ammunition boxes, luggage compartments, or even parts of the wing, with varying results. Thankfully, by that time, there were more organised official shipments of beer making it to the troops. However, the enterprising pilots kept up their flights with semi-official permission from higher-ups. They just kept it a better secret.